Russia is expected to declare a temporary ceasefire in and around 2 Ukrainian cities that have faced heavy bombardment. Russian forces are set to stop fighting to allow people in Mariupol and Volnovakha a safe passage out. Mariupol has been under siege for days, with residents facing a shortage of electricity, food and water. Jonah Hull has been covering developments from Lviv. Hello there, Jonah. What more are you hearing about reports of a potential ceasefire in and around Mariupol to allow these residents to leave?
Well, good morning. It is 700 GMT, of course, 9 a.m. here in Ukraine, 10 a.m. Russian time. And the very latest that we are receiving, first of all, a report from the Russian Ministry of Defense indicating that as of 1000 hours, 10 a.m. Russia time, Moscow time, that is, I beg your pardon, Russian forces will cease fire around the towns of Mariupol and Volnovakha. That's a little bit inland from Mariupol, but also in the south, to allow humanitarian corridors to open up. And apparently confirming those reports, reports coming from inside Mariupol, from the mayor, Vadim Boychenko, who's been pretty vocal in the last few days describing appalling conditions inside the city. He says that a green corridor is in the process of being opened, the occupiers' guns ceasing in what he's described as a regime of silence. So that appears to be confirmation from inside Mariupol that as we speak, a humanitarian corridor is being opened. We don't know any more detail about that. We don't know how long it will be opened. We don't know how many points of exit around the city that it might cover. We don't know exactly what it will allow to enter and exit the city. But Mayor Boychenko has been, as I said, very descriptive in the last few days, talking about conditions inside Mariupol. It's been surrounded and besieged for several days now, cut off from water, from electricity, from heat. You can see the conditions around me. The temperature's extremely low. It's also running low on food supplies and medical supplies. He's talked about mass casualties in recent days. They've been unable to even remove the injured in some places from the streets. So this humanitarian corridor could not possibly be more necessary. And remember, there are other places in Ukraine that need them too. Talks on Thursday between the two sides agreed humanitarian corridors would be set up. This appears to be the first of them.
OK, Jonah, stay with us. We want to cross back to you in just a moment. But let's get an update now on the latest from Ukraine's president, who's accusing NATO of giving Russia the green light to further bombard and kill Ukrainians. Volodymyr Zelensky says the alliance's refusal to establish a no-fly zone will only add to civilian deaths. The city of Chernihiv, just 143 kilometres from the capital, Kyiv, came under heavy bombardment overnight. The sheer scale of destruction is getting worse as Russian forces move deeper into Ukraine. President Zelensky blamed any future deaths or destruction on NATO's inaction.
All the people who die from this day forward will die because of you, because of your weakness, because of your lack of unity. All that the alliance was able to do today was to pass through its procurement system 50 tons of diesel fuel for Ukraine, perhaps so that we could burn the Budapest Memorandum guaranteeing Ukraine's security.
So, Jonah, certainly some fierce criticism from the Ukrainian president, but that's unlikely to be enough for NATO to change its mind.
Well, Volodymyr Zelensky's message absolutely is hardening now all the time towards the West. Remember, at the beginning of this invasion, it was his address to EU leaders at the EU Council in Brussels when he said, "This may be the last time you see me," that spurred them into action in that massive package and successive packages of sanctions aimed at the Russian president and his inner circle. And now, as you say, this extraordinary message to NATO that the blood will be on NATO's hands if it fails to apply a no-fly zone. The Ukrainian president and his ministers repeatedly calling for a no-fly zone now and calling it a failure of NATO, a failure of NATO's unity if it doesn't do so. Well, the reality is this comes as NATO, is congratulating itself on its very unity in protecting its eastern flank, but that does not include Ukraine. Ukraine is not a member. And Jens Stoltenberg on Friday was abundantly clear about this when he was asked yet again about a no-fly zone. He said this is not NATO's war. NATO cannot prosecute a no-fly zone. That would mean shooting Russian planes down. That could herald an awful conflict between Russia and the West, with potential nuclear implications.
Indeed. Thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. Jonah Hull, live for us in Lviv.